Hello, everyone, and good morning. I'm Michelle Johnson, Event Marketing Specialist at ProcessMaker. Thank you all for joining us today for our second annual ProcessCon Developer Conference. We have a packed agenda today, and we'll be showcasing the latest in process automation, product roadmap, as well as hearing from some unique guests and Laravel experts. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you all to our upcoming user conference, which will be next month on March 23rd. Please find the registration link in the chat box. Now I'd like to introduce today's keynote speaker, Alex George, our Chief Technology Officer.
Thanks, Michelle, for the introduction. And thank you everyone for joining us. We're really focused on a couple things this year, and I'm hoping to walk you through the roadmap and really through this process, give you a view of three core areas of focus. The first is from our research, where we see the market headed, where we see your time being spent, and where we see your clients' time being spent. The second is really around functionality that we think is incredibly important to the product. And then third, of course, we'll spend time in detail around the roadmap and how we believe our efforts are aligned with your efforts to kind of deliver effectively to your client base. As we go through the process, we really think that there's a couple core capabilities that become important. We found that most organizations, most companies, especially in the economic environment that we're in now, are focused on trying to save. There's a real effort to be financially effective and financially intelligent about where money goes and how it's being spent, especially in the context of SaaS applications. The second is really growth and a focus on making sure that growth happens effectively, and we have a clear path towards that. And then finally, efforts to transform the business, efforts to really kind of make sure that users and employees and customers have incredible experiences. Towards being able to do that, we think the first set of capabilities that's become incredibly relevant has been the need to kind of optimize resilience, to be able to build a digital immune system. And that functions in a number of areas. The ability to be able to see what's happening transparently throughout the application. We want to know if it's the software that's running slow, if it's the underlying infrastructure that's running slow, if it's calls to third-party APIs that are running slow, or applications that have been written on the platform. Augmented testing becomes important. Chaos engineering to deal with unique, unlikely circumstances becomes important. And then remediation to resolve those kinds of issues in an automated way becomes important. And as we kind of see all of that happen, the goal in many companies is to drive downtime lower and to try and get to a place where downtime is reduced by 80%. So this drives a really significant effort by organizations to make sure that they have a clear path. We see the value of these kinds of digital immune systems kind of manifest in a couple spaces. The first is just increased operational resilience. And airlines are a great example of this. Being able to, in a moment, effectively address issues around flights, issues around weather events, issues around cancellations at a specific airport, and making sure that the rest of the network functions effectively. We never want to be in a place where a single hub can bring down the whole network. And that really is kind of manifested or most obvious in the context of airlines who are spending a ton of time working on this space. The second is feature release capabilities. Every new release doesn't have to break things in the last release, right? And we have to find a way to be able to do that effectively and do simple things like making sure that each release is absolutely regression, but also to be able to do things like feature toggling and those kinds of capabilities. And then finally, there are going to be incidents. And when there are, the resolution should be as automated as possible. The servers and the environment should recreate automatically. And client requests that have queued should be able to process automatically. We shouldn't have to nudge those systems or go recreate those systems or restart those systems. So we think as these three capabilities really come together, we're going to see that happen both in the context of what clients are doing, but much more so in the context of how you'll see ProcessMaker is building the underlying tools to make that much more available in the processes you build on our platform. Combined capability here then is to really work towards having a reusability structure. We want to be able to have templates, not just in our own software, but we're seeing that in the kinds of applications that developers build. And we're also seeing that kind of more broadly across, all the other platforms IT departments have. We want to be able to have the developer tools and the reusable components to make it easy, both from a consumption perspective, as well as automating complex infrastructure or complex connections to multiple sources of data to simplify the experience for the user or the client. The last kind of set of characteristics we're seeing has been also the shift to vertical specific clouds and industry specific clouds. The core set of capabilities that's happening here is that, in education or in financial services or in other verticals are the tools associated with that. The core, for example, in financial services, or the ERP in education, or the ERP in manufacturing, has a whole set of capabilities. And as those capabilities expand, there's really the need to integrate that vertical specific cloud into all the other clouds the enterprises have acquired. So the move has been from ERPs that were on-premise to these cloud solutions where integration and scaled integration becomes, one, far more possible, and two, far more necessary. So that change was also kind of becoming a core part of how industries are changing right now. And then finally, we're also seeing kind of this big push towards, larger apps, single platforms that are used internally or externally that can do a whole series of things for the user, right? There are smaller functions available in that larger app, so mini app development and publication that updates a whole set of features inside that larger app become possible. Data sharing amongst these mini apps becomes possible, and user activation happens because a user joins to work on a specific set of capabilities and then expands. A simple example here is, someone builds an app or starts with just the vacation use of an app, so the ability to book vacation or book holidays or book PTO, and then from that they expand to using more and more of the features all the way up. If you think in the context of an HR stack, all the way up to doing wellness checks and surveys with clients throughout. And then of course you end up adding financial functions from the financial cloud or from the HR, and from the sales cloud, the HR cloud, and so on. And this kind of over time builds, a complete set of capabilities in terms of how the consumer interacts with the business. So we think about the automation cloud, just another way of framing what we've been talking about is that we think that there are these vertical specific clouds. We also think there's finance, sales, marketing, HR, and there's lots of examples of companies that build software in those clouds. We also think that there's the need for automation, the ability to kind of tie the functions in those clouds together. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see some examples that are specific to banking, where account opening, for example, it really kind of ties together a couple capabilities across multiple clouds. We also see that expanding to being able to do banker tools or hiring, where hiring ties together the HR cloud and the finance cloud, for example, so that a hiring job requisition can flow through the business easily, or a hiring decision can be made, or an offer letter can go out to an individual. So that would be an example on the far right. Examples on the far left that tie together a whole series of capabilities would be account opening, and later in the presentation, I actually have just a short demo video that'll kind of explain that in more detail and give you a sense of kind of the richness that can be built on this platform. The additional set of tools or capabilities here really is around making sure that users are able to richly kind of engage and build specific components and then use just those components. So they don't necessarily have to use every part or every capability in the software. To be able to develop this kind of AI automation cloud, we really think there's three core sets of capabilities. The ability to understand the intent of the client or the user, the ability to make a decision. And this decision can be a BPM decision, decision management, or a decision engine decision, or driven by AI. And when we talk about AI here, what we mean is there should be the ability to route or determine who can best help in an escalation to a human based on an SLA. So a simple example is, we need to be able to route a transaction, and we want to be able to predict, which course of action will yield this transaction or this case being resolved as quickly as possible, or this case being resolved within the SLA. So we are trying to get 80% of the transactions done within 2 minutes, for example. And then, of course, we want to be able to source content. And those sources right now are very much APIs. We should be able to search, we should be able to add RPAs and capabilities similar to that. In the end, or over the next couple of years, we plan to build essentially what you see on screen here. We plan to build the ability to understand intent or communicate with customers or consumers across chat, across SMS, web forms, and even docs, right? You should be able to take a picture of a document and the software should be able to understand what's in the documents and begin to understand the intent that's being driven. We should be able to escalate that or get a decision made either by a BPM engine, a decision engine, or as I was talking about a few seconds ago, through an AI. Of course, sometimes there's just the need to escalate to a human, and so the software should be able to make that determination. It should also be able to store all these transactions and all of the context in a data lake so that we can do meaningful analytics. And the reason we think a data lake is important is because there's going to be structured data as well as unstructured data and potentially images and other third-party content formats in there. And as I said before, and what's really key to us is to be able to access, using a source engine, multiple sources of content, not just APIs, but we should be able to search, the internal document set for a company. We should be able to read PDFs. So we should be able to read every owner's manual for every General Motors car ever made, and be able to source and organize that content so that we can answer questions or so that the platform can answer questions or the platform can use that context to be able to make decisions in the decision engine. Of course, RPAs make web scraping much more simple, and that set of tools also becomes incredibly important. The roadmap that's going to help us drive to this set of solutions is essentially what I'm hoping to show next. We think there's a couple key components here. We want to be able to have an integrated set of IDP functions, especially in the context of DocuLayer. We want to be able to unify analytics, build engines and connectors, and then, of course, drive improvements and continue to focus on performance. The key set of capabilities around IDP are really in integrating kind of the OCR capabilities, the classifying capabilities, classification capabilities, the text-tract capabilities, and the NLP capabilities into the core modeler that you've all used and are familiar with. And we want to continue to add capabilities into that modeler that allow you to extend what's already possible. The second set of capabilities that we're focused on is analytics. We're breaking this up, or these themes, up into a couple deliverables. The first is the data lake itself. The second is customer analytics. And then the third will be customer dashboards. The cloud and product analytics you see below are really to help both us and you get a clearer view of the performance, not just of the application once it's written, but of the product and how it's being used. So when you write an automation, you can begin to see how customers are using that process, how your customers are using that process, and what they've liked, what they haven't, and so on. And the whole goal here is to reduce reporting work. We really want to make it very simple for clients to be able to access the content they're looking for, ask the questions they have, and be able to find ways to continue to optimize their applications. The next real focus for us is engines and connectors. I spoke earlier about the need for a decision engine, so that's going to be a core focus. And we want to do that first and then also work through integrations to RPAs. We are focused, from a connectors perspective, on both doing a native set of connectors as well as integrating into the large markets of connectors. In the native connector space, one of the core things that we think is going to be innovative is to engage the building and saving of templates. We will start obviously by releasing those templates in our own software. And then of course, with the developer community, we're really hoping to continue to work with the community to build more and more and more templates. So not only will we have the initial platform that's available, but in the modeler, you'll be able to see templates that ProcessMaker has built, as well as templates that other members in the community, the developer community have kind of built. The concept of templates for actual processes extends to, and a template for us in kind of that first area is the form, the process, and the scripts required to to make that template functional. In the connector space, our expectation is to do the same, but specifically around mechanisms to connect to third-party software and to make it simple to be able to do that. Of course, MuleSoft and Boomi are integrations that everyone's heard of and talked about in the past, so that'll be the next set of integrations. We obviously want to continue to focus on driving improvements in the software itself in the core set of capabilities. And that you'll see in autosave, in import-export, independent fields. We've focused on process testing and a process map, so you can kind of see the flow of your process and see, and then, model what the process would look like under volume. We'd also want to make it easy to be able to run a process that can kick off third-party functions in Google, in Azure, and in AWS Lambda. And then, of course, near the end of the year, we want to focus on building data vaults so that the data architectures allow not just for collections, but also for encrypted relational databases that can store, secure content at high volume and at high speed. The whole goal with this effort is to obviously continue to improve app development time and to improve the performance of the overall platform. As we talk about performance, we're really kind of focused on two things. I think later in the presentation or during this webinar, Ryan's going to spend some time specifically on Naira, so I will move quickly over that. But the next set of things we want to be able to do is really make the modeler and the screen builder drive another version of both of those capabilities. In many ways, we expect to be able to use capabilities that are now more natural language processing related or driven. And then finally, we want to drive collaboration features. We want to make it really easy for two people to pair code a model or a design. We want to make it easy for people to share components and to leave notes, to leave stickies, to edit, to comment on each other's work, so that the experience of developing becomes much more communal. As we were talking about this, I kind of mentioned that we really wanted to kind of walk you through the overall scale and scope of what's possible using the platform. And to be able to do that, I thought this little video may be helpful. So I'm going to play it here, and I hope you can hear it.
In this presentation, I want to highlight how ProcessMaker's comprehensive digital automation platform can help you build your own vertical applications specific to your industry or line of expertise. As an example, I will be showing ProcessMaker's own digital account opening solution for banking, built entirely with our platform tools and delivered as a fully independent product. ProcessMaker's low-code approach, ease of use, and feature richness allowed us to capture a complex, workflow-heavy industry process, such as how banks allow and enable both consumer and business applicants to sign up and open new deposit accounts digitally. The first challenge to solve is, how does this workflow usually begin? Our screen builder allows quick design of several types of user interfaces that we can leverage to kickstart a deposit account application. For example, we created dedicated banker dashboards for bank users to start the process, among other use cases like triggering other quick actions or monitoring the status of these requests. It's common for bankers to want to start new deposit account processes when working with existing customers or serving new walk-ins into a branch, for example. However, our screen builder also supports fully applicant-driven flows by creating screens and forms that can be easily linked and embedded within existing applications and websites. This has been the option of choice for many of our bank customers. New visitors can self-request the account and provide all the necessary information directly. The styling of these web entry pages can be customized to match the look and feel or wherever they're being used. As this information is provided, we can also leverage ProcessMaker's robust integration features to tap into all sorts of external APIs and third-party services that will run in the background and will help inform the deposit application. So we will be running checks and verifications on the applicant using their information to help me know your customer policies in place at the bank. And we'll see that a little bit later, how it plays out. The submission process for the applicant is clean and straightforward, and ProcessMaker easily triggers customizable notifications via email or text messages to keep the applicant informed of the status of their request. Now, ProcessMaker's flexible workflow routing allowed us to accommodate several ways these applications can go. In this example, let's say the request is escalated to a bank or reviewer who will be notified of their required action using our highly customizable in-app and external notification options. The reviewer will have access to all the information collected, including the results of those background checks we mentioned earlier. From here, the banker will be able to capture additional actions required that will inform the workflow's next steps. If the account is approved, for example, our data connectors will trigger the appropriate integration endpoints to create the new customer account within the bank's existing core systems and will notify the applicant with the appropriate results. So all of this was put together using ProcessMaker's Process Modeler, whose core workflow routing and orchestration features allowed us to be very granular in these specific steps that need to happen in order to approve and onboard a new account. Based on different criteria, we can route and escalate conditionally, enabling anything from automated approvals to stringent bank secrecy escalations. And of course, in the same fashion, we can easily ensure that if the account is to be denied, the bank meets its adverse action notice requirements by driving proper, timely notifications and log. Now, this workflow map view, this is what we use internally to model and maintain this application, but we don't necessarily need to expose this to bankers. Instead, they receive clean, curated interfaces where they can configure and manage the application and its integrations. And as always, all these interfaces are created within ProcessMaker itself and its tools. So this was just a very brief overview on some of the ways of how ProcessMaker can accelerate automating key applications using our world-class automation platform.
Awesome. So last, I'd like to spend just a few minutes walking through how we're integrating PM3 and PM4 and creating a single PM platform. Our goal is on April 3rd to release to all PM3 clients that are in the cloud a single platform that will have both PM3 as well as PM4. This is a huge opportunity, we think, and a huge change. It'll make it really easy for clients to develop new processes in PM4. They'll be able to build all the processes that they've wanted to build and be able to use them in new and interesting ways using kind of the PM4 architecture, but know that all the existing processes they already have in PM3, they can keep running in the PM3 platform. So both screens will be in one place. The PM platform will support notifications in a unified way, which you see on the right of the screen that I'm showing here. You'll be able to kind of go back to the classic view and see PM3 and be able to interact with your PM3 requests, your PM3 processes, and to be able to edit the PM3 processes that have already been created. Task metric and all the views that are traditionally been available in PM3 will continue to be available, and users will be able to, administrators will be able to go look at those metrics and of course interact with them as they have in the past. This also scales through to being able to manage task lists in a card view. Each of these capabilities that exist will continue to be available and continue to scale and continue to be accessible. The views are obviously available in multiple formats, both task lists and list views. And of course, the whole idea, the core of the capabilities here is to be able to integrate the two platforms and to be able to make sure that we go forward with a single platform, which is the PM platform. The release, as I mentioned before, is going to be on April 3rd. And as we continue to scale, we expect to build greater and greater capabilities that you've already seen on the roadmap into the overall PM platform capability and move to a release that will be essentially seasonal. So every 3 months, we'll have a new release. We will be referring to them by the season in which they come out on a North American basis. So it will be a spring release on May 1st, a summer release, a fall release, and a winter release. Thank you very, very much for the time. I look forward to any questions you have. Absolutely, please put them in the Q&A. And I think I'm going to hand back over to Michelle.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was great. Yeah, what we'll do is answer your questions after the event, since we are with limited time today. We do have a couple of questions in the chat, Alex. I'll submit them to you afterwards, and we can record, we can include the answers when we send out the recording. Thanks again, Alex.